everybody. Guess what movie we're reviewing today? Just guess. Guess what? Which? Okay, so we're reviewing Smile. I'm Haley. This is Jordan. It's okay. Okay. Yes. So we are reviewing Smile today. So we can go into the summary if you want to read that off for us.
After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. As an overwhelming terror begins taking over her life, Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality.
Whenever I was watching the trailers for this movie, I was like, this looks very familiar. I think I've seen something like this before. And then I remembered there's a short film called The Smiling Man. It's by Michael Evans on YouTube. It was made like 12 years ago, something like that. But I thought it was based off of this short film, but it's basically like a man, there's like little to no dialogue. There's little to no dialogue. It's just a man walking on the street, and then there's a man behind him, and you can just see his smile. You can't see his face, it's just his smile. And he just follows him for like 4 minutes straight. And then I don't know, you should watch it, the ending. I don't remember the ending, but that's what I thought this was based off of, this movie. But yeah, it made me really excited to see Smile because I really, really enjoyed that short film because they did so much with so little, you know. Anyway, back to Smile. We're going to do a character breakdown of the name and occupation of all of the main characters. There's some more side characters, but these are just the main people who have the biggest roles in the movie. So you can go off there.
So the main character is Rose, played by Sosie Bacon. She's the main character, and she's a psychiatrist, works at a mental hospital. There's Joel, played by Kyle Gallner. He plays a police officer and is also kind of love interest of Rose. There's Laura, played by Caitlin Stacy, first victim at the beginning of the film. There's Trevor, who's played by Jesse T. Usher and the fiance of Rose. And Dr. Madeline, played by Robin Weigert, and she's the therapist psychiatrist of Rose.
Yeah. So those are just the main people in the movie. And we can do a little plot breakdown too. Let's see. Okay. So we have some notes written down, but I think I remember it pretty well. So the movie starts out with a woman in a bed, and she's sick or she's overdosed or something, and she's just laying there, and then all of a sudden it shoots to Rose in her at her job at the psychiatric ward, and she's dealing with a patient. I think it's Carl, and he's having some sort of manic episode. She's telling him like it's not real, and then he's telling her, you don't understand, it is real. She's like, well, I do understand where you're coming from, but it can't hurt you. And he's just like, okay. But he keeps saying like, I'm gonna die, we're all gonna die, stuff like that, just keeps repeating himself. And then it turns to Rose meeting with her boss, and her boss saying, apparently she gave a patient treatment that wasn't authorized by him, and she was wanting her to get help, but she didn't have insurance, and he was just upset about that, and then was like, how long have you been here? And apparently she worked overtime when she wasn't supposed to, so she was supposed to leave, and then she gets out of the office and then comes back because she receives a phone call, and she picks it up, and they're like, oh, there's a patient waiting for you in this observation room. And then you can talk about what happens after that.
So yeah, she was about to leave, phone rings, patient showed up.
Which is Laura.
Which is Laura. So she goes into the room, and Laura is obviously very frightened, and they sit down and they have a conversation, and Laura tells Rose what's been bothering her, and she says, I've been seeing this thing, and it wears people like masks, and it looks like all different people, even her grandpa who died years ago.
But yeah, she mentions that her grandfather died in front of her. Or she watched, you know what she was there.
And then all of a sudden, Rose says, Laura, look at me. Laura does, and she just starts screaming, backing against the wall, freaking out. So Rose goes to call security, and as she's calling security, the noise stops. She hangs up the phone, turns around, and Laura is behind her, staring at her. And she brings a piece of glass.
Yeah, there was a vase that was on the table, and it broke, and she took a piece of that vase.
Yeah, and she cuts open her neck in front of Rose and dies in front of her. And you just see Rose sit on the ground crying.
Yeah, and also whenever she's cutting her face, it's first her face and then her neck, but she goes from right here to like right here, and then goes down her neck like this. And yeah, she's smiling the entire time, and Rose is just like has no idea what's going on and doesn't really say much either. She's just like watching it happen, unfold in front of her. So then after Rose deals with all that, then the police come and she has to give a statement about what just happened to her. And so she's like, well, this patient, she has hallucinations, and then the cops are, well, one of them is Joel, which is a guy she used to be in a relationship with, and then this other guy, which is his partner, I'm guessing. And his partner is asking all these questions like, oh, was she a psycho? She sounds like a head case. And it's just a bunch of like words that are kind of condescending to people going through mental health crisis. And Rose obviously doesn't like what he's saying. But she does explain to them that she was having hallucinations, some form of psychosis, and that whenever she was doing what she was doing, she was smiling the entire time. So she returns to work, and after the Laura Weaver incident, she returns to work, and the patient Carl that she was interviewing,
she was
helping, yeah. She went into his room and saw he was like this, and would not stop smiling, and it was like he wasn't even there. And so she goes up to him and she's like, Carl, and he like won't move a muscle on his face. He just keeps that smile. And then all of a sudden he's like rushing at her saying, you're gonna die, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. And so she goes and gets security and they tie him down. But I don't think this actually happened in real life. I think it happened in her head. From what
happened in her head?
Like where he was rushing at her, telling her that you're gonna die, you're gonna die, you're gonna die.
Well, yeah, it was the monster.
Yeah, it was the entity. Because whenever she goes to talk to her boss about it, she kind of has feelings about it, and she's like, well, maybe it didn't actually happen, maybe I imagined it. And I do think that was the entity because Carl was always super docile, yes. So anyway, she gets a week leave from work after that incident because it's just one thing after another, and I really, her boss is looking out for her in this situation. So yeah.
So she goes home and the security alarm goes off in the house, and she obviously gets scared, and then an operator with the security company calls her and says, are you alone in the house, and are you sure? And then the phone rings again, and it's the real operator. Another instance of her being taunted by the entity. And then her fiance Trevor returns home, and they notice the cat is missing. So.
And after that, she goes to, Rose wakes up in the middle of the night because she has a nightmare about her mom, and she wakes up and she goes downstairs and listens to the audio from her session with Laura, and she thinks that she hears something in the audio, so she turns it up, you know, just to hear better. And all of a sudden, I'm not sure, I don't really know who it was. I don't know if it was Laura or if it was her mom, but someone appears right next to her and makes her freak out and grab a knife from the kitchen. And she's screaming and doesn't know what to do. And then Trevor runs into the kitchen and is like, put the knife down, put the knife down. And she like is just so in her own reality, like she just doesn't know what's going on. Anyway, after that happened, then she goes to see her old psychiatrist, I guess she used to see when she was dealing with stuff with her mom, because she hadn't been there in a while. And she asks to be prescribed antipsychotic medicine because she's been experiencing these, what she thinks are hallucinations. And her doctor she denies her medication. After that, Rose does attend her sister's, her nephew's birthday party, and she gives him the gift that she wrapped for him, and she's just sitting there watching him open it, and all of a sudden everyone is like, well, he pulls, first off, this spoiler by the way, he pulls out her dead cat out of the box, and it's just like hysteria in the entire party because this is like insane, pulling a like it's supposed to be a birthday gift and it's a dead cat, and they think that Rose did it, that Rose put it there. And so Rose is like picking up her dead cat, holding him, being like, I swear I didn't do it, I swear I didn't do it, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. And everyone is just freaking out and crying, and she sees Laura sitting in a chair in that room, and she's like, does no one see her? Does no one see her? And no one sees her, obviously, because it's all in her head. And then she ends up falling back into a table, a glass table, and it shatters everywhere. And she ends up having to get bandaged everywhere. And then Trevor comes to pick her up.
So Rose has been investigating what happened with Laura, and the person that Laura saw die was Gabriel, and so Rose goes and visits Gabriel's widow, Victoria. So Victoria shows Rose that Gabriel was traumatized by the death of his brother 20 years ago, and he saw at a conference, he saw a woman die in front of him, and Rose kind of probes more than she should have, and Victoria kicks her out of the house. So then she goes to Joel, and she kind of finds this pattern of when these people see other people die, then they themselves die. They do it to themselves and in front of other people. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so Joel uses his police computer to find connections for her. So for Laura, it was Gabriel, and it's a cycle, basically, of all these people inflicting harm on themselves. And if you see it, if you witness it, then the entity latches onto you, if that makes sense. So apparently, Joel does more digging after Rose leaves, and he finds out that there are 20 more linked cases. She finds all this. She prints out all of these connected crimes or incidences, and she is trying to show Trevor. So she goes home, and Trevor is in the living room with her psychiatrist, and he's like saying, you need help, like, I didn't know what to do. And she's like, no, you just love the easy stuff. When it comes to the hard stuff, you don't want to deal with it. And he's like, I'm trying to help you. And she's just like, you didn't want to deal with it. So then she leaves, and she goes to her sister's house after that whole incident with her son and the dead cat. She thinks it's a good idea to go to her sister, which I wouldn't have done this, but maybe she thought like that was her last hope, was to try to, ask her or get validation from her sister about what's happening to her because of her whole mom dying thing. But anyway, she tells Holly, this is what's happening, I don't know what to do, and basically they get into a fight, and Holly doesn't believe her, so then she leaves, and then I really like this scene also. There's a scene where she's leaving the house, and then Holly comes back, so Rose gets into the car, Holly comes back out, and knocks on her window in the car, and then all of a sudden her head just goes whoop, and it's not Holly, obviously, so then she has a freak out in the car, and I believe that Holly's son sees her freak out in her car, which probably traumatized him even more. But anyway, so she also finds out that there was an exception to all of these cases. Was this guy named Robert Talley who watched his business partner die, and then instead of doing it to himself, he does it to someone else, and then so he gets free of whatever entity it is, but then now he's in jail. But Rose wants to go see him because she thinks he might have some answers about what to do or how to survive this entity. So she goes there with Joel, and she sits down with to interview him, so I want to know how you avoided this entity, and he's just like, oh, you just have to do it to someone else. And then all of a sudden she's like, I can't kill someone. And so he finds out that she is the one that has the curse now. And he's freaking out. He's like, get out. And so they leave, and then Rose just believes she's gonna die now. And then she goes home, and her psychiatrist is there to visit up with her, check up on her, and they're talking on the couch, and then all of a sudden she gets a call, but it's from her psychiatrist saying, hey, I'm gonna come by in 10 minutes. So she realizes the person sitting on the couch in front of her is in fact not her psychiatrist, and it is the entity. And I really like this part too. It's very, very creepy. Because then she turns back to her psychiatrist, and she just has that smile on her face. And it's like she almost grows 10 sizes whenever she walks over the couch, but it's not human-like. It's inhuman-like, and then goes right up to her face and screams in her face.
Hospital, she has a kitchen knife, and she's sitting in her car, and she goes into the hospital, goes up to Carl, has her boss come into the room, ask her what she's doing, and then she just stabs Carl to death in front of her boss. But then we kind of swoosh back out, and it was just her imagining doing it in her car. And her boss does come up to her window and is like, I'm worried about you. And she just drives off, and he saw that she had a knife with her. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so Rose thinks that the only way she can escape this entity is to be alone, which is true, we think, because it works for a while, where she is alone and she confronts her mom.
Yeah, she goes to her childhood home.
Yeah, she goes to her childhood home where she doesn't think anyone would know where she was going. She doesn't tell anyone where she's going because she thinks it'll be safer that way. So she goes there, she confronts her mom. She has this whole scene where she is saying, I was just a child. How was I supposed to do anything? You're the parent. You were supposed to be there for me. I'm not supposed to take care of you. You were supposed to take care of me. And so she's confronting her trauma head on. And then all of a sudden her mom turns into this entity, which I gotta say, that thing was so creepy and so good. I usually don't get that freaked out when it comes to monsters, but I actually looked up the actor who played her, and I was like, because he looks so scary, and I was like, they did such a good job choosing that actor. But this thing, how would you describe the monster or the entity?
I mean,
it's huge.
Really long limbs, very tall, and just frightening face, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, so she has it out with this entity and somehow ends up setting it on fire because I think it's like, it's choking her. And then she's like, I have control of my own brain, my own thoughts. And then for some reason that helps her defeat the entity. So then she runs out of the house because the whole house starts on fire. So then she runs out. And then and then she goes to Joel's, and then you can explain what happened when she goes to Joel's house.
When she visits Joel, she's talking about their past relationship, things like that, and Joel starts smiling in the same way that the creature smiled, and she realizes that she never left her childhood home. And she runs out the front door, and Joel is arriving at the house, the real Joel.
Yes. And she obviously freaks out because she's like, this is horrible. I'm supposed to be alone. Why are you here? And she runs into the house, locks herself in the house, and the entity is still in there. Joel is struggling to get into this house because obviously, Joel, he's such like a wholesome character. Like the entire movie, he is just trying to help her. And it doesn't work out for him, and it sucks, and I just hate it so much because he was such a good character and just wholesome guy, and he did not deserve this. But anyway, so he is trying to bust the door down, trying to get in there, and then we see into the house where Rose is, that she is still with this entity, and all of a sudden it is entering her body. So it's hard to explain.
No, it just pulls open.
It pulls her jaw down and climbs into her body. But again, the entity is huge, so it looks so very disturbing seeing this entity go into her. And anyway, so then Joel finally gets into the house, and he's like, Rose, where are you, Rose? And she's turned away from him, and whenever she turns back, she is covered in gasoline and has a match, and she lights it, and it just makes me so upset because he knew, and they knew what was going to happen, but she lights herself on fire, he watches it, and then that's the ending. Spoilers, but anyway, it is a very good message for mental illness. If you don't deal with the problems you have, the trauma, whatever it may be. So yeah, if you need treatment, I think you should go seek it out, and don't let anyone tell you that therapy does not work or therapy is stupid. Talking about your feelings is dumb, because it's not. Right, guys? Okay. So yeah, we are going to break down our favorite scenes and why, our least favorite scenes and why, and things we would change. And also, I thought it would be fun to try to figure out what we would do in this situation as well. So,
I like the scene that Haley talked about earlier, where the therapist kind of turns into a big monster. I just thought it was really well done, scary, and yeah, I really like that scene.
Yeah, oh, it's so good. So, my favorite scene is, which some people would think this is kind of weird that this is my favorite scene, but it's just because I guessed what happened before it happened. So at Holly's son's birthday party, the whole thing with the dead cat in the box, whenever the son has the box in front of him, I leaned over to my friend that I was watching the movie with, and I was like, the cat's in there, the cat's in there. And they were like, no way. And I was like, it's in there. And then all of a sudden, the boy pulls out the cat, and I'm like, ah. I think it's just because I have such a twisted mind when it comes to horror movies. Like, I'm just like, I knew that was going to happen. So I think that's why I liked it more. But it was just so, such a good representation of what Rose was dealing with and how psychotic she must have looked, and like how crazy the situation was, and like how devastating it was for everyone else to watch her go through this. And it was a good demonstration of how helpless she felt, because she was just she adds like holding the cat, and everyone is staring at her in disbelief. And I just think that was a very good representation of her mental state, and how it really does, how this entity takes away, like strips your identity down, basically. So yeah, we can go into our least favorite scenes now.
I guess the scene was okay, but I dislike the ending in a way, because Joel knew that
They knew what was gonna happen. It happened anyway.
If he watched her do what she did, that it would move on to him, and yet he still watched. And so that was just kind of frustrating for me at the end, to just be like, you know to just look away, I
know. Well, yes, I have to agree to disagree on this one, because I loved the ending. I think it was like really unexpected, and I love unexpected endings, but I do agree with you with the whole they should have known better, because that was the whole thing. That's why she went to her mom's house, to be by herself, and he still showed up and still watched her die. So yeah, it's just frustrating. But anyway, my least favorite scene. So whenever Rose goes to the widow's house, it's kind of unnecessary, because she could have just had a phone call with her or emailed her or something. But it was cool to see all of his artwork of the entity, so I guess it was a little foreshadowing of what it looks like, which I thought was cool. But I mean, really, if they took the scene out, it wouldn't really affected the movie at all. But I mean, that's like the most I could do for my least favorite scene, because I really enjoyed this movie completely, but this is just the one scene I thought they could have taken out and not had a problem with. So yeah, we can go into one thing we would change.
So I did like at the end that Rose lost, because I just feel like in most movies, or a lot of movies I've seen lately, the protagonist always wins. And so I like that she lost to the monster. And I kind of just wish that the movie overall would have subverted expectations more, because I think a lot of this movie was predictable, but it was still really fun. So, I mean, it's worth a watch, but yeah, I wish they'd subverted expectations a little bit more. Yeah.
I don't see it's necessary to change something. I thought it would be good to talk about, maybe. Which I love. This is what I love about any movie, is flashbacks. And I do wish there were more flashbacks when it came to her mom, Rose's mom, or Joel and Rose's relationship, because I feel like we didn't really know. We knew that her mom overdosed, but we really didn't know Rose and Holly's relationship at all. And I think that would have been good to include, is how Holly left Rose and how Rose was dealing with it, or if they were had a good relationship, had a bad relationship. It wasn't really, I mean, obviously they didn't have the best relationship whenever they were older, but maybe they did when they were younger. I don't know. But I enjoy flashbacks, and I thought that if they included some in there, it would have added to the movie and got a little more background on where Rose was coming from. But yes, would we recommend?
Yeah.
Also, we should give a rating as well. I would say a 9 out of 10.
I would have said 7 out of 10.
Okay. I just really liked it. I can't explain why. It's just
I think it's a good movie, but like I said, a lot of it was predictable, so I just think it could have been more unique, but it was still good.
Yeah. I mean, I might be coming on a little strong with that 9 out of 10, but it was one of the better horror movies I've seen last year. So I just really enjoyed it. I just love horror movies, so, Anyway, so I would recommend this, definitely. Especially if you're just starting out in the horror genre. I think it's a good movie to, get introduced to, because it's not that bad. Like it's in terms of like goriness.
It's not
and
gory, really.
Yeah. It's just slightly disturbing. Like
disturbing.
the ending scene, me and my friend were talking about it for like 5 hours after the movie. Like we were like, what just happened? Like that was so crazy because it's just nothing I'd ever seen before. And it was quite disturbing, but besides that it wasn't that bad of a like
it had some jump scares, but
yeah.
It was good. It was a good scary.
Yeah. So I would love to talk about what we would do in this situation. So
you know, they talk about a lot of options in the movie, but it's just, I don't know. It's a lot because you have the option where you could
opt out.
You could kill somebody else, but obviously no one wants to do that, and you're saying, oh, instead of me dying, this other person is going to die instead.
Yeah.
And I just, that just doesn't really seem like an option. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of was, could opt out, but make sure you're alone and just do it before
someone finds you. Before
the entity can.
Yeah, so also, we don't know anything about this entity besides that it like latches onto people and then they end up opting out like 7 days later. So it kind of has like the Ring vibes going on, or It Follows.
Yeah,
also.
It Follows for sure.
But yeah, we don't know that much about the entity, and would someone be able to defeat it? We don't really know because Joel showed up.
Well, yeah, and it's all in that person's head. No one else can see it. So, but it's almost like, what if you were put into like a medically induced coma? Would it be asleep because you're asleep? Like,
think about this one, guys.
You could just keep it trapped forever, or
would it move on to someone else?
Or would it just take over your body even if you are asleep?
Yeah.
You know, does it not matter if you're conscious?
Yeah, because I think whenever the entity enters your body, you are no longer there. Like, it has full control over you. So, like, hypothetically, even if you were on day 6 and you opted into a medically induced coma, would it be able to, like, wake you up out of this coma to get you to harm yourself?
Would it not matter?
We don't know. We don't know. But we thought maybe that would be the best option, but we don't know that much about it.
Being alone was a good option because it seemed like it can't move on
until like
unless someone else is there. So it is kind of like if you were just completely isolated, but there's no way to guarantee that because as soon as someone else shows up, it's game over. So
yeah. And it is also interesting how like every like deadline for these kind of movies is like 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. So like, and I guess you can't escape it because it is in your head.
It's in your head. So it's like get a lobotomy.
But then like I think okay,
well,
but if your like body wasn't
if you were strapped to a chair, like you literally couldn't move.
Yeah.
Like because you'd be worried about hurting yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, like I was thinking maybe you could check yourself into a facility where they put you in that big padded room with the straitjacket on, and maybe at that point
you'd have
nothing you could do.
Rely on other people, you know,
to get you stuff and
to also to never take you out of it.
Yeah.
Because once you're out of it, then it seems like it doesn't take very long.
And also, how much does this entity care about that certain person? Because I feel like if you're too much of a problem...
Yeah, could it just jump to somebody else?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or is it trapped with you?
I don't know. That's the thing. Because he always wins. So, hypothetically, if it's day 7, you're in a straitjacket in a padded room, can't really do much about that.
Yeah.
Unless he took control of her body, their body. But even then, you're in a padded room in a straitjacket, so there's not much you can do unless all of a sudden you get superhuman strength and break out of it.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, guys, and listening.
Thanks.
We will be reviewing another movie soon, so Thank you. Keep on smiling. Yeah.